Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Kier, and with me as always is my co-host Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
We are going to be recapping the Steelers' Week 11 win over the Browns and previewing their Thanksgiving Day game against the Indianapolis Colts. But before we get started really quickly, I just wanted to touch on a few things. Obviously, it is Thanksgiving week. We have both had quite busy weeks, to say the least. I am in Florida as opposed to New York this week, so I am not recording from my soundproof room. Instead, I'm recording outside on this lovely night, and that's why it might be sounding a little different. And due to the fact that it's going to be a short week, we're going to have to jumble our two episodes into one this week, so we'll try to get that for you. Austin, I know you were working during the game this week, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Did you get a chance to see any of it at all after the fact?
I did get to see some of it. I didn't get to see all of it. I listened to all of it, but I was pretty pleased with the play.
Yeah, all things considered, especially after the past month is gone. Believe it or not, I was supposed to be on a plane at noon, so I got to the airport in Rochester at 10 a.m., and due to weather delays and flights getting canceled, I had my flight rescheduled several times, so I ended up leaving Rochester at about 4 o'clock. I wasn't expecting to see any of the Steelers game, and I actually got to see all of it from the airport. So I wasn't able to live tweet the game itself, but I was able to see the game, most of the game anyways. There were some points when I wasn't able to watch because I was only watching on my phone or, buffering or certain first world problems of being able to stream the NFL games on your phone. But all things considered, it was a tumultuous day, and it was a good win for the Steelers at 24-9, albeit over the winless Browns, but the Steelers needed a win in the worst way after losing 4 straight games, so they'll take whatever they could have gotten. Based on what you saw and heard, what were your initial thoughts or takeaways from the game, Austin?
My initial thoughts and takeaways were that this is a good confidence boost. If we didn't have a blowout-type win, which, we won by 15 points. I'll consider that a blowout. It's 2 scores. So I think that confidence is really good going into next week. Because you lose 4 straight, you kind of just get that losing mentality. It's really rough on the team. So that's what was my initial thought. I didn't want a close game because I thought it would really hurt them. And I also think this really ignited the pass rush. I think it did justice for the pass rush. 8 sacks. It's against the winless Browns we do have to consider. But I think when you have a game like that, it really does boost confidence after everyone's telling you you're garbage and such.
I understand where you're coming from, but you also mentioned it. It's the Browns. How much how much do you think the players can actually take away as actual confidence to the point of being helpful instead of thinking too highly of themselves after beating a team that really has almost no talent and has been devastated by injuries? What I'm trying to say is it might have been a confidence booster, but how do they guard against false confidence when you're playing such a bad opponent?
Well, I'm going to skip forward a tiny bit and we'll go back in a second, but the Colts actually have the 32nd worst passing defense. So we're going on to a game that is going to be almost just as easy, just the records look different. It's hard to... The Browns are still an NFL team. Let's look at it that way. And they still have a better defense than the Colts. So I think it could still be taken as a W. And actually, if we do good against the Colts, I think that's actually worse. We should get less confidence from beating the Colts than the Browns, because the Browns, what they did is they came out ready for a divisional game. They knew what we were doing. We had struggles in the offense. This is where the game was bad for the Steelers. We struggled offensively, right? But it's because the Browns prepare to fight us twice a year. go deep in the trenches. I mean, they haven't been successful because Big Ben is the all-time leader in the Browns stadium since it's been built for wins out of the 144 games played in the Browns stadium. I also would like to point out that the Browns have lost some devastating games. The first game of the season, I believe it was, they were up 21 points on the Ravens, and the Ravens came back to win it. It was devastating. And then they went into the half of the Jets game like 3 weeks ago, and they were up 20 to something, another big lead, and they just blew it out of the half. They're not good at holding leads. Oh, and against the Ravens the second time, like 2 weeks ago, they had a lead going into the half. It was a small lead, but they just can't hold on to it. They just don't play two halves of football. I still think we could get some confidence out of this because they do play well at times. They just really fall apart.
I generally agree with what you're saying, where a win is a win against any NFL team, no matter what the circumstances are. I just had to play devil's advocate there, just for the sake of the argument. But looking back at the game as a whole, the Steelers' defense really did show up in a big way. They only gave up 209 yards, 209 total yards, my apologies, and only 33 of those yards came on the ground. The Browns only carried the ball 13 times. Really, the offense kind of took over early in this game, and they didn't put the game out of reach, given with all the field goals that they scored early on. But if you were watching that game, it felt like the Steelers were just moving the ball nonstop on offense. Le'Veon Bell had one of the best games of his young career. He towed the rock 28 times, I believe. Let me double check that. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
28 times for 146 yards and a touchdown, tacking on 55 more yards on 8 catches. He was the de facto star of this team, at least on offense today. Not to be lost in the conversation is the offensive line. On a day when they were facing one of the worst rushing defenses in football, the Steelers' offensive line and Le'Veon Bell both came to play today, on Sunday, and it really felt like they were in control the entire game. And the interesting thing is Le'Veon Bell didn't have a run longer than 12 yards. So that basically tells you that most of his carries were consistent 5 or more yards every carry. So that's a big credit to the offensive line and Le'Veon Bell, too, for being able to keep the ball in the hands of the Steelers' offense for most of the first half and most of the game, too. The weather conditions in Cleveland were not very good. That is probably a big reason for why Ben Roethlisberger's numbers were way down. I believe he only accounted for 167 total yards through the air. He wasn't sacked, didn't turn the ball over, so it was a relatively clean game, but there wasn't much to be had as far as the deep ball goes. I saw a few intermediate routes that I was happy to see, which I felt like we hadn't seen in a while, but once again, the Steelers were just living through Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. No other receiver had more than 4 catches other than Brown and Bell. It was Eli Rogers with 4 on his own. There were only a combined 7 receptions by any other receiver not named Brown or Bell either. So once again, the Steelers' biggest problem, other than not being able to score in touchdowns in the red zone, which we'll get to in a minute, it's the fact that someone else needs to step up. The Steelers were able to get away with it this week, but going forward, it's going to continue to be a theme until someone else does. Someone else has to step up. Moving into the other problems that we had discussed with the offense, the red zone woes. Wow, the Steelers scored 1 offensive touchdown in this game, and I don't know if you saw the sequence, but they had, I think, 3 different chances where they had the ball inside the Cleveland 5, and then there were 2 untimed plays due to Cleveland Browns penalties where the Steelers took a big chance going for the touchdown, which I like the aggressiveness, but in that situation, a field goal would have put them up by 2 scores. The Steelers really got lucky there, and they really have had a tough time scoring in the red zone the last couple weeks. What are your thoughts on their struggles, and how do they get better?
back to the win thing, I want to give a shout out to Chris Boswell for scoring. On a day where kickers missed 12 kicks, Boswell didn't miss one of those. If you told me that 12 kicks were missed, I would have told you that Boswell probably missed 2 in the Windy City. So shout out to him first of all.
Are you mentioning kicks or PATs, or both?
I think the stat was kicks. I think it was both. I think they were counting both. But
I know there were at least 10 PATs missed, which is the most in the NFL since I think 1970 or 1985.
Yeah. So I was pretty proud of him, even though we couldn't score in the red zone. That was my first takeaway from it. But now let's move into the woes. Why this is bad. I really think what came into play is it's a divisional game. You're ready for these people twice a year. You are prepared to take them on the best you can. And I believe Mr. Ian Rappaport, he was saying that the Browns prepare for the Steelers twice a year. So they know the deal. They are able... I'm sorry. Pause.
One.
So I hold that partially accountable for the reason, but I mean, there was some poor plays that I saw. One of the poor plays that I did see, it was right before the Le'Veon Bell touchdown, which Antonio Brown looked like he was getting wide open, and luckily there was a flag called, but Ben Roethlisberger just missed him. There was a lot of bad things to look at, and obviously we weren't really having wide receivers step up per usual. This has been the theme for weeks, that we want a wide receiver to step up, but it's just, if his name is not Brown or Bell, they're probably not going to step up, especially with the depth we have. It sucks, but that's what it is. You really have to attribute it to the wide receiver play and the tight end play. I thought Ladarius Green could have easily caught it. A ball went straight through his hands in the end zone. And that really disappointed me as my first thought of Ladarius Green. It's just the woes of the tight ends and the wide receivers not named Bell or Brown. I mean, Bell isn't even a wide receiver, but I look at him as one of our top receivers right now.
He is pretty much the de facto number 2 receiver this year. It's as sad as that is with the injury to Coates. There really hasn't been a second guy this year. And that's why I think, honestly, if there's going to be a red zone presence with the injuries to Sammy Coates' fingers, I don't know if he'll ever be the guy that he was at least earlier in this year. I think it's going to have to be dependent on the tight ends, particularly Ladarius Green and Jesse James. Grimble's a receiver, but he's not someone that I'm going to expect is going to get a lot of snaps, and David Johnson's primarily a blocker, so I'm looking at...
Hey, he caught a 2-point.
He did. He did, in fact. It was actually a nice play. I'm pretty sure it was a one-handed grab, too.
Yeah, it was a pretty good play. I did get to see that one.
I wasn't expecting him to do that, but I was pleasantly surprised. He's been a pretty nice pickup.
I do like him. I do like him as a blocker. He is probably the best of the tight ends in blocking.
Yeah, Jesse James probably had his best blocking game of his career, which is nice, but he really isn't that polished, and we knew Ladarius Green wasn't great at it, but he certainly isn't anything of a blocker at this point, still recovering from his injury. But getting back to the topic at hand, I think, my apologies, there's something going on over here at one of my neighbor's places. I think it's going to have to take someone like Ladarius Green or Jesse James becoming someone like Heath Miller under the middle, someone who's reliable with their hands, but I just don't see James being that kind of person this year, so I think it's really going to be on Ladarius Green to be that athletic tight end, the guy that we thought we were getting back in the offseason. I don't know how long it's going to take for him to come back, but I have seen reports saying that he's supposed to be a full go this week. And honestly, I wasn't expecting too much from him this week, given everything that was going on with the weather in the passing game. So I'm hoping to see him a lot more in a dome environment. I think he I think he starts contributing a lot more next week, and I think that's going to be huge for the red zone. Another thing I think the Steelers can do to help their red zone woes is to try to run it a little more, because they did score on that their touchdown on a running play. When you're playing horrible teams with bad rushing defenses like the Browns and like the Colts, why not run the ball, especially when you've been having such success? But that's my 2 cents on that. One last thing I wanted to get to about the Browns game, unless if you have anything else you want to add quickly.
Nope. You can go on to what you want to talk about.
I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the pressure the Steelers caused. We already talked about how they only gave up 209 yards of offense. They only gave up 4 of 15 third down conversions. Excuse me. They forced 2 turnovers, one of which was a scoring play of its own, where I believe it was Shazier stripped Josh McCown, and rookie Javon Hargrave recovered it in the end zone for his first career touchdown. That's a nice moment for him. But the Steelers' defense, as you said earlier, was fantastic in the pass rush today. Granted, as we have discussed earlier, against the Browns, but no doubt a huge game for the pass rush. Stephon Tuitt, let me see here, had a list here of every player that got in on a sack. It was Stephon Tuitt who led the way with 2.5. Arthur Moats had a sack and a half. James Harrison, Lawrence Timmons, Ryan Shazier, and Javon Hargrave each had a sack for the Steelers, and they finished with 8 on the day. And that, this is sad, but the Steelers had more than half of their entire season sack total from the previous, 9 games in that one game. So they had 13 sacks going into that, and they accumulated more than half of that season total in this one game with 8 sacks.
I just want to point out and shout out, because I almost completely forgot when we were scripting this. Shout out to James Harrison for becoming the Steelers' all-time sack leader in this game. His first sack started against the Browns, and then his sack that led to him being the all-time leader for the Steelers came against the Browns. So his career developed in Cleveland, I guess.
A full circle, huh? His career comes full circle. It was certainly interesting. I saw a tweet that young linebacker at that time, Alonzo Jackson, was not good at special teams, and James Harrison was, and that was why he got to start that fateful day in 2004, which ultimately led to him becoming the Steelers' all-time leading sacker. And while sacks weren't an official stat until 1982, long after the Steel Curtain of the 1970s, it's still an incredible statistic to lead in for the franchise's history, considering all the great linebackers and great pass rushers that have been on the Steelers. It felt like it almost feels like he has been for so long, but he's always been that. Even like the last few years when they haven't had much of a pass rush, he's always been that guy that can get the job done when needed to. So definitely big congratulations to him. He is the best at rushing the passer. At least that's what the statistics will tell you when it comes to the Steelers. So big shout out to him. So speaking of rushing the passer, what did you think about how it looked for the Steelers today or this week?
It looked really good, but again, we have to go back to that this is the 0-11 Browns. But, however, one of the strong points, if you will say, of the Browns, in my opinion, was their offensive line, because they have Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas is just probably the best tackle in football right now. It's hard for me to think of another one, because Joe Thomas hasn't even missed a snap, I do believe, of football. He's always been in. And it's just, I think the pass rush coming against the Cleveland Browns, it was a good showing. I think that this is a really good look, and it's a confidence boost.
Absolutely. I don't really have anything else to mention about the Browns other than Cody Kessler was knocked out of this game about midway through. He wasn't very effective at all. I felt like the Browns moved the ball a little bit better with Josh McCown in, even though McCown really wasn't, slicing and dicing the Steelers' defense. He did have a nice touchdown pass to Gary Barnidge that beat Artie Burns, who had another good and bad performance when it comes to another interception, but was also beat on that touchdown. All in all, it was a win against an NFL opponent, is what you can say when it comes down to it. The defense played well again, albeit against a poor offense, and the offense played well, but it didn't convert as much as you'd like it to. So going forward, the Steelers are going to have to play a little bit better on offense when they go to Indianapolis on Thanksgiving Day, the late night game on primetime on NBC, to play the second place 5-5 Indianapolis Colts. By the way, the Steelers are now in a tie for first place due to the Baltimore Ravens loss, although the Ravens hold the tiebreaker with the division record. The Colts are also 5-5, a game out of first place, who are the Houston Texans, having just lost on Monday Night Football last week. The Colts reports is that Andrew Luck is probably not going to be able to play in this game. A short week and a potential concussion means that Scott Tolzien could be getting his first start in almost 3 years. What would that mean for the Steelers, Austin?
Oh, this is fantastic news, because Tolzien in his 2 starts, his career stats are he's 56-91, so he's actually not bad when completion percentage, but for 721 yards, only 1 touchdown and 5 interceptions. I don't believe coming to the Colts helped him, because he was on a good Green Bay team. The 2013 Green Bay Packers, which is when he got his 2 starts, they were a good team to start with. They had Jordy Nelson, they had Randall Cobb, they had weapons, and they had the offensive line to protect them. So I don't think coming to the Colts, where their offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL, it's pretty close. It has to be the Seahawks have the worst, but they come pretty close to the top 5 worst. And not many wide receivers to help him out. I mean, he has T.Y. Hilton, which is a big name, but after that, it's kind of like, who is going to step up here? Is it going to be Dorsett? Is it going to be Moncrief, who just got back from injury like 2 weeks ago? They just really haven't stepped up. And with Tolzien starting, this should be good for the Steelers defense.
Geez, sounds familiar, where they need someone else to step up besides their number 1 receiver. Looking at the stats here, I think you mentioned it before. The Colts actually have a worse total defense, and you mentioned it. It comes in with the last ranked pass defense, giving up over 284 yards per game. I definitely expect Ben Roethlisberger, no matter who's playing, to do what he's done against the Colts each of the last 2 years, and that's throw the ball and throw the ball well, particularly the deep ball. Ben Roethlisberger threw 6 touchdown passes 2 years ago and 4 last year, so he has 10 touchdowns to no interceptions against the Colts the last 2 years. However, this game is coming on the road on a Thursday night. I think that is, no matter who the Steelers are playing, when you're playing on the road on a Thursday night, I think that definitely favors the home team. I think this is going to be tough on the Steelers simply because of what I just mentioned. I think the Steelers are still going to be able to win. They're still going to be able to move the ball, but my concern on offense is exactly what happened against the Browns, facing a relatively easy challenge against a not very good defense. They struggled to score touchdowns in the red zone, and that's what I'm most concerned about for the Steelers' offense. Defensively, the Colts don't really pose much of a threat running the ball. I remember I sent you a tweet that I saw earlier today talking about how the Colts' rushing attack, I think all of their runs of 10 yards or more half of them have come from Frank Gore, and like another 7 or 10 have come from Andrew Luck. No other player has had a rush of more than 10 yards. So their rushing attack is not... Go ahead.
They only had 21 10-plus yard plays on the season. 11 have been Frank Gore and 10 have been Andrew Luck.
Exactly. So this isn't an explosive offense, particularly on the ground. And in the air, it's pretty similar to the Steelers as far as it goes when it comes to receiving weapons. So I haven't had much time to look at this game given the fact that it's been a really short week, but I think the fact that it's on a Thursday in Indianapolis and it's Thanksgiving will make this a hard game for the Steelers to win. If you want to make a comparison, think of the 2011 game where the Steelers traveled to Indy facing the Curtis Painter-led Colts, and it was a game that went right down to the wire where the Steelers had a strip sack by James Harrison where Troy Polamalu recovered and took it into the end zone for what ended up being the game-winning score. I think it's going to be a close game, closer than it really should be, if whether or not Tolzien or Andrew Luck plays. I think that the Steelers are going to win. If Andrew Luck plays, I actually see the Steelers winning in overtime, 27-24. If Tolzien starts, I think the Steelers win a close and sloppy game by a score of 28-17. What are your thoughts on Thursday's game, Austin?
Well, before I even thought that Luck wasn't playing, I thought this was going to be a blowout win for the Steelers. In the past two games against the Colts in previous years, as you said, Big Ben has thrown a whopping 886 yards for 10 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, outscoring the Colts 96-44. I think this trend will continue as the Steelers blow away the Colts for the third straight year in a row, and I say that the Steelers win 31-10. Big Ben will throw 3 touchdowns and continue the streak of no interceptions against one of the poorest Colts secondaries he's had to face. 1 to Antonio Brown, 1 to Eli Rogers, and 1 to Jesse James. Le'Veon Bell will also punch in 1 for a score. Do you have any bold predictions for this game?
I do. I believe that Ben Roethlisberger is going to make a couple of connections on the deep ball in this game, something which we haven't seen in a while, whether it's been injuries to receivers, as we already talked about, or the fact that last week the weather was really bad. It really wasn't easy to throw the ball deep. But the Steelers are going to be nice and cozy in the Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, a nice dome. And going back to that 2011 game, the play I remember most is Ben Roethlisberger nodding to Mike Wallace and then throwing a deep 86-yard touchdown pass to him. So I think we could see something like that again, especially given the fact that Roethlisberger's had so much success throwing the deep ball against the Colts the last 2 years. I already mentioned this in my final score prediction, but I think if Tolzien starts, he's going to play relatively well, and I think he'll keep the Colts in the game. But I think in the end he'll commit a single turnover, and I think it's going to happen late in the game. I think the Steelers are going to break through, whether it's a strip sack, fumble, or an interception, but I think that's going to lead to a score that's going to put the game away. What about you, Austin?
Well, I have the Steelers recording at least 3 sacks. Coming off of a high week last week and coming against an already struggling Colts offensive line, I can see it happening. It's just, I don't fear the Colts offensive line. I honestly think the Cleveland Browns offensive line is probably altogether better. So I definitely hope to see 3 sacks.
Jeez.
I think it's happening.
That's really saying something.
Secondly, I think there's going to be 2 picks for our defense. The 1 pick will be for the first for all the safeties all year, and we discussed off of the podcast about how when we talk bad about a guy, he starts doing good. With Arthur Moats, we talked bad about him on the podcast, and then about how he doesn't show up. Then he showed up with 1.5 sacks, which is not great, but he showed up. And so since we've been talking so much crap about Mike Mitchell lately, it's going to be him. He's going to get his first pick of the season. And the other pick will come from Shazier.
All right. I'm definitely hoping for that too, but quick question. You said the Steelers get 3 sacks. Who do you think they come from?
Ooh, I'm going to give 1 to Javon Hargrave.
Hey.
Just 'cause I want to see some good stuff out of this rookie again. 2, I'm going to give 1 to Shazier. So Shazier's going to have a big game in my opinion because he's going to have a sack and interception. Then third one, this is a hard one. My mind wants me to give it to James Harrison, but something's telling me about Ricardo on the edge.
Ricardo Matthews?
I'm going to go with Ricardo. Yeah, I'm going to go with Ricardo Matthews.
I want to see that.
step up. I'm gonna hope he steps up. So I'm gonna say Ricardo Matthews, Javon Hargrave, and Shazier.
You know what? It's not called bold predictions for nothing. So that's definitely a bold prediction. We'll have to see if it pans out. Just going back to, I was just thinking about Shazier, man. When he's healthy, I really, I don't know. It's tough because Cameron Hayward does so much for the Steelers defense, but since he's injured right now, I'm willing to say that Ryan Shazier is the best player on the Steelers defense without a doubt.
He's another one. He's another one that you didn't talk crap about, but I specifically talked crap about. I was like, oh, he gets injured so often, I want him to be traded, and then he comes back and is just like, yeah, stop talking crap and just has great games. It baffles me, and I do agree with you. I think Shazier is one of the best players on the defense when he's healthy. It's just not often that you get to see him healthy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he misses plays sometimes, and a lot of young players make mistakes like that. But I never really, for one, believed in the whole injury-prone thing. I mean, I understand where some people get it, but I don't think, as often as Ben Roethlisberger gets injured, I don't think he's injury-prone. Because if you look at his injuries from last year, they were kind of just freak accidents. So I don't necessarily believe that just because you get injured a lot, that doesn't make you injury-prone. I think if you injure the same thing several times, well, that's another story. But I wasn't super high on Shazier when he was drafted just because I saw his weight at 237, and I'm like, this guy's not going to be able to make it as an inside linebacker. And he's beefed up a little bit, but he's kept his speed, which is the most important thing. And he is quite a player. So I think that just about wraps it up for me. If there's anything else you want to add before we get wrapped up here tonight?
Yeah, I actually do. I hope to see more play out of Bud Dupree. I mean, I didn't expect him to get a lot. I wasn't actually even sure if he was going to play, and he saw one snap.
I was going to say I don't remember him playing at all. Like that was a storyline we definitely talked about last week, and then I just remember looking back and I was like, did he play? Because I didn't remember that.
Yeah. I honestly didn't see him, and then I saw a tweet that said. That was talking about it. He said he came in for one play, so I took the word for it. And yeah, apparently on that one play he didn't get a sack. I said if he were to come in and play, he would get a sack, and he didn't on that one play.
To be fair, I don't think we were expecting only one snap, but now that we know what the bar is set at for him as far as his recovery, I think we can expect something very similar to Ladarius Green, where he's going to get eased back into the defense. As far as how quickly he returns to his form, to be fair, it's kind of hard to tell because we don't really know what Bud Dupree's, I guess, ceiling is at this point. He had 4.5 sacks early last year, then kind of hit the rookie wall. I'm a little worried that he's not going to be able to get to his full potential this year because of his injury. But I think he can still return and be a somewhat serviceable player this year, but I don't know how long it's going to take.
I agree with that. I hope that he provides some help in pass rush still. Because even though coming off that 8-sack game, I don't believe in this pass rush for a minute.
Absolutely not. Like, I expect the Steelers to get some pressure and sacks against the Colts because we have the last couple of years. But looking up, who do we play? The Giants next week. That's not a great line either. But at the same time, I don't know. There isn't that premier pass rusher. There hasn't been since Lamar Woodley left in 2013. I mean. And he wasn't himself since like 2011. We haven't had a premier guy who can actually just get after the quarterback. If you ask him to rush the passer on 20 separate occasions, he's gonna make the quarterback nervous for at least like 12 to 15 of those plays. You know. All right. Is there anything else you want to add here quickly?
Nope, that should be about it.
All right. Just wanted to say thank you, Austin, for talking to me tonight on this hectic week. I know we were really scrambling to get this one done, and make sure that we did it because of the short week. And I know everything with me flying and you working has made watching last week's game difficult. I want to thank all of our listeners, and I want to say have a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy the beginning of your holiday season. We definitely are, and we're hoping it's enhanced by a Steelers win on Thursday night. Everybody, have a great night. Go Steelers.